Whoa.
Hi, and welcome to the Men on the Path to Love podcast, bonus episode, Manifesting the Life You Love with Manifestation Coach Drive Patel. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. In this bonus episode, you'll hear my conversation with Drive Patel. After years of navigating self-doubt, burnout, unfulfilled potential, battling alcohol and gambling addiction, he discovered the missing piece wasn't the hustle, it was in the healing. Now, he's a manifestation coach who helps people to clear their inner roadblocks, rewire limiting beliefs, and align energetically with the life they truly desire. He guides his clients through a unique blend of mindset mastery, energy work, and actionable manifestation strategies that actually work in the real world. So if you're curious about how to manifest the life you love, then stick around. You just might learn something. It's the Men on the Path to Love podcast. Welcome, Drive, to Men on the Path to Love.
Great to be here. Absolutely lovely to be here, Bill. Thank you for the invitation. And I hope yourself and your listeners can get something inspiring and can change their path to something that is a lot more beautiful than they may be seeing at this moment. So yeah, absolutely fantastic to be here.
I believe they will. We had a little chat before we started, and you gave me a little history about your name, Drive, because that's an unusual name. Can you tell that story?
Absolutely. So my name was meant to be spelled Druve, which is Druve. However, if you have a look on the keyboard or next time you text on your smartphone, the U and the I next to each other, and the registrar put an I instead of the U. My dad, being in a hurry and trying to open his shop at that time, just said, "Please just register, baby." And he was in a rush, he was in a panic, and he never even saw the paperwork. And so I got registered as my birth name as Drive Patel, not Dhruv Patel. But all through school, I'd always been known as Dhruv because at those times, they didn't really need to see a birth certificate regarding your name. So all through school, all through my teenage years, I just assumed my name was Dhruv. And then it was only when I received my passport that I thought that was a typo at the start. And then I checked my birth certificate and realized, my name is Drive. So instead of changing it and going through all down the legal, which is a bit of a rabbit hole in the UK, I just thought, you know what, I'll go with it. Maybe it's meant to be, and I'm here to either drive people forward, or maybe I was meant to be an Uber driver. We won't go with the latter.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I'm all about stories here on Men on the Path to Love, and I always ask my guest at the beginning to tell me your story. Tell me how you got from where you were to where you are now as a manifestation coach.
Sure, absolutely. It started from a lot of darkness. Growing up in a really rough part of the UK, myself, my sister, my mum and dad, we lived in an area where we was the only people of colour on our street. Mm-hmm. So we would get our houses egged on a regular basis. When I would be walking down the street, the clothes that I wore would constantly get bullied. We didn't belong here. You're in the wrong country. We had all the stereotypical racist abuse. And unbeknown at that time, Bill, all of those traumas that were happening to me were getting stored inside of me. And my parents really never let that come out because their kind of belief system was, that's just the way it is. We kind of have brought you over here for a better life. We just have to deal with society the way that it is. So I just kind of got brought up with, that's the way it's always going to be. And unbeknown to me at that time, it caused these dormant traumas that never really got activated until a few years later. During my academic years, I've always felt that I do have so much to offer. However, the limited belief system that I never belonged or believed within myself was now manifested in a way because of all that childhood trauma that was still dormant within me.
So all that subconscious behavior was
absolutely
going on. Yeah.
So as I was getting older and kind of pushing my later teenage years, the internet just started coming, and it was rampant. And when I was doing my academia, it was just so easy to look for an answer on Google as opposed to going in yourself, believing in yourself.
Sure.
It was just such a big temptation for someone so young and didn't really know much about limited beliefs and subconscious. So that carried through me, and also my university years. I'd never really thought that I was good enough to be able to get a degree or to achieve much by myself. So again, I delved into the internet during my university years, and there was one module, and I'll never forget it to this day. It was called Methods of Inquiry. And it was a module where it was impossible to cheat because there was no right or wrong answer.
Mm.
It just had to flow, a bit like this conversation we're having now.
Hmm.
And I got the best marks in the whole of the university that's ever taken that module.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, where is this fire in me? Where did this belief come from? And it was purely because it was told to me that it's now or never. There is no other alternative. But again, what happened was I then went into the limited belief system because there was other modules where you could just go onto the internet. So that's how my university years kind of progressed, just having a glimmer of a bit of hope that if I wish I could believe in myself.
You had a taste of it, like you kind of started to
Mm.
get that awareness.
Sure, absolutely. But at the time, all of that awareness was quashed by, the ego, the doubts,
Right.
and the clouds were just too heavy. And then it just got worse and worse. It led me to some very, very dark places. I then found alcohol, which so many people do at university, and alcohol was an amazing thing initially for me because it brought out this new personality, someone that I never knew that I could become. I was more jovial. I was the life of the party. I could talk to anyone and everyone. And all of a sudden, I realized that I was putting this person on a pedestal so high that the authentic me could never resurface because that wasn't what people wanted to see.
You had to live up to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All the time. And whenever I would have to be in a social situation, meeting new people, I would need to have a quick drink just to calm my nerves. And I had created this persona where I had to be the person that had to have a drink with me in order to get through this social event.
Yeah.
And that happened for many, many years. And then I kind of hit another addiction. It was just literally one after the other, and some of them coupled. I had intimacy issues. I would jump from woman to woman because any lady that would give me a form of attention, I would, wow, that would be it. There'd be no filters. It would be, okay, I'm going to be either in a relationship with her or I'd have a one night stand with her.
Hmm.
And there'd be never any kind of, is this person on alignment with me? Is she on a spiritual level with me? Do we share any connection? Do we share any hobbies, interests, morals? All of that went out the window just
Right.
because those childhood traumas that I had gone through said to me that I was never good enough, never, ever good enough, never good enough to have a sober conversation, never good enough to meet my true partner or someone that aligned with my purpose. And then it went to one of the worst addictions that I ever faced, and that was a severe gambling addiction.
Mm.
And the smartphone had just come out, having access to a worldwide, for me, it was sports betting and winning my first ever free bet on a sport betting website.
That's
It was a 2010 Soccer World Cup. I'll never forget it. It was Carlos Puyol for Spain, 44 to 1, sorry, 42 to 1, only £2. It won £84. And then it was like the alcohol. It was again, instead of trying to think of a business or where I could bring value to the world, it was there's this little carrot dangling, and you can earn so much money from a little bit of knowledge because you've just done it. And I hit rock bottom again and again and again. The paychecks that I would lose, the guilt, the shame that I would feel, and hiding all of that. And it was something that I hid so well from my late father and my mum and my wife, and it still is rampant today, my thought process, because I can pretty much no longer watch a soccer match, just because in the UK now, I don't know what it's like in the States, but it is bombarded by advertisement for betting, even during the game, so many times.
All the time. Absolutely. Any
And
sporting
it's,
event, it comes up all the
yeah.
time. It's crazy.
So I'm very aware now of that, and I choose not to engage with that, just because if you was an alcoholic, why would you spend most of the time in a pub or a bar, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I choose to do that now. And when my last time that I felt that guilt or shame, it must have been about the 13th, 14th time I hit rock bottom. I said to myself, right, are we here just to be suffering and just to be in pain constantly? And I'd never forget this moment where there was a book on the floor. It was in my mother's room, and my mum was a practicing Hindu, but I never really was in the religious space. I never gave it too much attention. And it was the Bhagavad Gita. And
Sure.
I just delved more and more into the spiritual world. Those words just purely resonated with me. And then I traveled the world to seek some spiritual guidance, Far East to Asia to Africa. And the skeptic in me still wanted to see the science. So then there was a wealth of science coming out by Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Sure.
and the secret was becoming more and more popularized. So I went on my own journey, and I realized that everything that has been happening to me regarding the trauma, the inability to believe in myself, the relationships, the alcoholism, the gambling, it was kind of the universe saying to me, listen, you need to go through this darkness so you can actually see the light.
Mm.
And to this day, I don't have a single regret of all of the things that either society put on me, my mum and dad, the sporting websites, the smartphone, the alcohol, because it led me on this journey to so much peace and enlightenment, and a realization that manifestation is something that anybody and everyone can achieve. However, the caveat to that is there is so much attention and so many influences out there. I liken it to the purest form of water from the Himalayan springs, and the influencers are constantly promoting the water. However, the water gets poured into a muddy vessel, a muddy cup.
Yeah.
And what happens to that water? It gets contaminated. So all of the that I see around people, and I'm sure that their intentions are pure, they try and do the gratitude journaling, they do the visualization, the affirmations, the meditations. But the problem is, Bill, is that their cup is become muddy through social conditioning, through habits, through behaviors, through, and the biggest one, reactive
Yeah.
behaviors, that all of the good that they are doing is becoming undone, because first they must be accountable and they must be responsible for their vessel. And once they clean that, that's when they add all of the techniques.
Absolutely.
So my coaching is more towards what people need to hear as opposed to what they want to hear.
Right. And that's important. And when you try to promote this, they don't know what they need. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So you kind of have to
sure.
tell them that. And listening to your story, and I'm sorry in a way of the trauma that you went through as a child, and the discrimination that you went through, and all those things leading up through your dark path. There's a part of me that's sorry that you went through it, and I'm glad that you had that. It's kind of like my journey with three divorces, and here I am, a
Mm,
relationship coach for men. Like I had
mm,
to go through all that in order
mm.
to really figure out what it meant to be, and now a 16-year relationship and growing
Amazing.
bigger and better every day. So we have to
Fantastic.
understand, if we're going to get to the other side of that darkness, we got to go through it and accept it and take responsibility for it to move
Mm.
forward. And that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, accountability is one of the biggest things, but it's also one of the hardest things to find in people.
Sure.
I've lost clients before because, as I said, they just want to know all the good stuff. They want a quick fix. They want a
Right,
pill. They
right.
want to manifest in 14 days, 30 days. And I'm here to say that it doesn't work that way. You
No.
have to grind. It's been, for many people, it's decades of the social conditioning to what they've been exposed to, but their own belief system as well is one of that. Whatever happens, whether it be something simple such as a traffic jam, they are going to react in a way that not only raises their stress hormones, their cortisol, and making them more prone to cardiovascular disease. But in terms of the spiritual realm, they are delaying their manifestation because they are working from a lower vibration and a lower frequencies. Those are two words that I kind of say over and over again
Yeah.
because science shows that, to simplify it, if you want to manifest an abundant life in terms of all material things such as wealth, health, relationships, you have to be of that vibration. You have to have a high frequency, you have to emit high feelings
Mm.
and high vibrations, and that will send signals to the universe, and your connection will be strong, just like a Wi-Fi connection. If you have a weak Wi-Fi connection, your internet connection is going to be weak.
Right.
And the Hindus call this karmic energy, otherwise known as karma. What you emit out there,
Hmm.
you will receive. And what people are doing is they are so interested on what they can add, they forget what they need to remove. And when I was in India, I saw a gardener, and his garden bill was absolutely beautiful. Never seen anything like it. And I asked him, "What makes your garden so beautiful?" And his words will live with me to the day I die. He said, "I don't force my plants to grow. I simply remove what stops them."
Wow.
In a similar way, we are, all of us, it is our birthright that we are going to receive anything and everything that the world has to offer, the material world has to offer. But it is us that create these blockages, that create these barriers. And it's like putting an umbrella up on a sunny day that stops all that light flowing.
Hmm.
And once we stop the reactive behavior, and once we are aware, the awareness is one of the biggest things of what is around us in terms of media, in terms of our own social networks, then that is the first step to removing and clearing the vessel.
Yeah.
And that's the first step of coming pure. So,
Yeah.
but it's easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said awareness, because, you know, I learned this a long time ago on my own personal and spiritual journey that, it was one point I remember saying, I want to go back to before I knew all this stuff, because before then I didn't have to do anything, and when you
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
awareness, you can't unaware it. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
you can deny it and you can, resist it, but that's where the growth comes in, when you have the awareness of these patterns that have held you back in the past,
Mm,
the traumas that you've been through, and processing them and seeing the correlation between what happened to where you are now with your patterns. That's just another example of how we can turn those traumas into
mm,
something very powerful when we take the time and have the courage and strength to look at it and know
sure.
that you're going to get beyond it and move forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not, I will say, so many people do enjoy, unfortunately, becoming the victim and becoming addicted to the victim
Well, it's
because
yeah, it serves them it in some kind of way, and it prevents them from getting what they truly want. And it's
absolutely,
kind of a convenient excuse or way to be the victim, so I don't have to do it, and I'll blame everybody else, and I
absolutely,
don't have to do anything.
for sure. They're kind of their comfort zone has become their cage,
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
it's so hard to escape. So absolutely, I mean, I'm sure it's the same in the US than it is in the UK, how the media kind of feeds on that.
Sure.
And I remember I regularly show my clients over here, one of the biggest news channels. We have Sky News and we have the BBC, which I'm sure you've heard of. And
Sure.
I told my clients for 7 days, just look at the news headlines, but every single day. Once you're in a good place, just have a look. And they all reported back 90% of their main headlines, if not more, is always fear-based.
Absolutely.
And that is because fear sells and we consume more when we are in a scarcity, fearful mindset.
Yeah.
Whereas in truth, we only are ever born with two fears, and that is the fear of heights and the fear of loud noises.
Mm.
Everything else is socially conditioned. The film Jaws came out late 70s. 90% of people stopped going and bathing in the ocean,
Right.
whereas you're more likely to die from walking down the stairs as you are getting eaten by a shark.
Exactly.
And it just shows you how the media manipulates our own psyche for their own agenda. And again, like we mentioned earlier, it's just about awareness. You don't need to change the media, you don't need to get angry about it. But as long as you're just aware of what is out there and what we are exposed to, you can then either make a conscious choice to not listen to the media, or if you do, just become aware, okay, that's not serving me right now. Thankfully I'm aware of it, but I will now move on with the rest of my day.
And I say you don't have to keep your head in the sand, but just enough to
Mm,
be aware of what's going on, but don't get
for
consumed by it.
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there are so many people as well. I mean, it used to happen to me when I was working with people, that so many people create a toxicity within their own life that when you stop asking how they are, because you know the predictable answer,
Yeah.
and it's going to drain you.
Yeah.
And you've probably heard it, and I'm sure your listeners know that there are some people that just love talking about themselves. And before you've known it, 10-15 minutes have passed and you feel mentally, physically drained. But unfortunately, as well, they have lowered your vibration, they have lowered your frequency, they've diminished your field, and you are not going to be in a fit state to be able to manifest whatever you want. Because again, we need to become from a place of high vibrational frequency, high fields, and we get stuck with the same people. So we have to make a conscious choice of who we surround ourselves with. And it is,
Absolutely.
I'm not saying it's easier, or it's easier said than done, because I've had my own troubles, especially with close family members that are constantly complaining.
Sure.
And so I had to do some, serious work and had some serious talks. And over time, that has completely changed. And to my surprise, when I work on myself and when I truly, truly follow all the work that I preach, it's like a miracle that the ones closest to me stop engaging in that kind of conversation, because we
Yeah.
are absolutely contagious, just like laughter is contagious and those negative beliefs is contagious. Our vibration is. The best thing that you could ever do for your children is not set them up a trust fund. It's not giving them the most lavish holidays in the world. It's not spoiling them. It's raising your own vibration.
There you go.
They will feel that, they will connect with that. And that is the most purest form of love that you can ever do. So it is so important that we don't focus on changing others, that we focus so much on working within ourselves. And I tell clients, even if you have the most stressful day, for 5 minutes, just take some time out in your car before you step foot through those doors. Either do a breathing technique or quick and easy fix. Use technology to your advantage. Go on YouTube, listen to your favorite stand-up comic,
Mhm.
look at your funniest clips on YouTube. Laughter is the forgotten emotion.
Oh,
You ask someone, when did they laugh so hard that they cried? When did they laugh so hard they could actually feel their abs? And once they engage with that laughter, all of that oxytocin and serotonin that they produce and will increase again the vibration and frequency. Their field is stronger, and their children are more likely to be not only more honest about their day, but more forthcoming with any of their problems. It all happens naturally. So yeah, that's one of my biggest takeaways, especially with the way the world is going, the way that certainly in the UK, kids have become a burden, unfortunately, for what I see with their parents. Then their third parent is the iPad or the
Right.
phone, the TV.
Here,
They're
go look
just
at
so
this so
quick,
I don't have to deal with you. Yeah.
for sure. And I see it more and more. And it's such a shame because the technology out there can do so much good. But unfortunately, what Charlie Chaplin said in his dictator speech is manifested in a way where it's meant to bring us closer together, but it's pulled us further apart.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you were saying about being around people that are, like
Mm,
energy suckers, vampires. There's a term a guy I interviewed once who wrote a book called Don't Be Nice, Be Real. And he called it people like that need to go to on and on anonymous. Like they just keep going
mm,
on and it drains you. And if you allow that, and I think that's the key too, is understanding that you're allowing this person to go on and on
mm,
and on, or to talk negatively and complain and bringing those negative energies and low frequencies. It's understanding you're allowing that. So it's up to you
mm.
to create that boundary one way or the other.
Absolutely. I was just going to say it's about creating boundaries. And I used to find that extremely tough because I was naturally an introvert.
Hmm.
I never wanted any kind of conflict or confrontation.
Sure.
And then when I realized what it was sapping out of me, I thought, no, this is not worth it. So I had to have those tough conversations, and it meant that I wasn't liked by my work colleagues. But you know what? I felt so much peace
Absolutely.
just being able to focus on myself. And at the start, it was extremely difficult because I knew that they would gossip about me and it would play on my mind and it would play on my mind. And then I did more the work, I did the breath work. And I essentially, after months of working on this, I created an invisible shield around me.
Mm.
And I looked at every time I knew that there was talking about me, I would breathe in, I would make sure that I would become in the present moment and I would let it pass. And every time that made me grow, it made me a beacon of of this person that I've created that was not affected by any outside source. It felt the most whole I've ever felt in my life. The blissfulness that I receive from it is something that money can't buy. And that's what I tell my clients about the manifestation is that essentially whatever you want to manifest, whether it's wealth, whether it's health, whether it's a relationship, you must come from a place where you feel whole.
Hmm.
And the caveat and the contradiction to that is when you feel that, you do not actually care about all of those things that you were so desperate for before, because
Yeah.
the feeling of wholeness completely eclipses anything that the material world can offer. But again, the contradiction comes is when you are in that space, everything starts to come to you.
Yeah.
Opportunities, coincidences, serendipities, doors start to open, but
So
you have
it's
to be brave enough to knock.
it's all about building that I don't give a fuck muscle. It's like I
Yeah.
got to do me. I got to be me. I got to be who I am. And I want to touch on relationship because that's what I focus on, men in relationships. And when I
Mm.
work with my clients, it's not so much saving the relationship, it's saving themselves. Like
Yeah.
let's get in touch with you and your patterns and your pain and let's be a better you so then you can take that to that relationship that's going to be on in your terms, on that same vibration. What can you say to our listeners? Maybe they're looking for a relationship, they're maybe not in one right now, or maybe not satisfied in where they are. What would you advise as a manifestation coach to manifest that relationship?
Absolutely. Great question. I mean, the first thing that we have to realize is once we work on ourselves, so we're looking outside for love, but once we realize that, once we begin to really look back at our lives, so we can do some journaling here. So once we start to engage with our passions again, so passions or hobbies, whatever we feel where time just completely goes out the window, whether that be playing tennis or soccer or reading or some sort of creative art. Once we engage with that again, we are then contributing to the field. Whereas when we constantly think of or try and look outside of ourselves, whether that be some form of substance or addiction, or even love itself,
Yes.
we are then drawing from that field. So in order to get our true soulmate or our and have deeper connections, we must have deeper connections with ourselves. And I'll give you an example how this worked for one of my clients, and I'm sure that your listeners can empathize with this. So one of my clients, he had this repeat behavior of the type of relationships that he would be in. And again, it all stemmed from his childhood traumas. And these patterns kept appearing in every single relationship. The partner was a bit of a control freak and they never put him first. He was always put down the line. And he never was allowed to see his friends, or he was never allowed to do anything for himself. And this happened multiple times. So I said to him, look, go and do things that you normally wouldn't do in a relationship. So start to fall in love with life again. Start to do things that genuinely give you joy. I mean, and I'm not talking about things that like, you know, watching a Netflix binge or going down and getting drunk or taking drugs. No, I meant something authentic that genuinely gives you some joy. For him, it was going and being in his friendship circle that he hadn't seen for 15 years and connecting with those people again. And then he started to laugh that like he had never laughed before. He was feeling emotions that he'd never felt in such a long time because these relationships with him didn't allow him to do so. He then started, that allowed him to then start in working out. He started to feel better by working out. He started making some positive changes in his life by walking 10,000 steps a day. And all of these things that he was doing, his diet, everything just happened with momentum. And it all started with his passion of his social circle that he hadn't seen for 15 years. And then he started painting and he started reading. He started playing a sport that we call cricket. I don't know if you've heard of it over then.
Sure.
That he used to play as a child in teenage years, and then he never got to play it because his weekends were always busy trying to please his partner's plans. And then when he done all of those things, he completely forgot about wanting a partner because he felt such a zest for life.
There you go.
That he then thought, you know what? A salsa class has come up and I'm going to completely take a punt here. I've never done this before. And he and a friend went to this salsa class and they connected with all of this group of people. And 4 months later, he was in a relationship with someone that completely aligned with him, that he never, ever would have given the time of day to even converse with, let alone going on a date with, because he was so addicted to these repeat behaviors. And
Sure.
I would say to people, look at your own relationships in the past. There must be a common theme with some of them. And once you're aware, we're coming back to that word again, the awareness, then you know what not to look for and truly challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone, which has become your cage, engage with activities that used to give you so much passion, whether that be as a childhood or a teenage year, that we lose naturally when we go in the working world, because a salary becomes everything and anything. And then we get too tired. And so we binge on whatever substance our choice is. And then we get stuck in that loop. So if you want to create a new future, you need to break out of that loop, engage with the passions that you were so passionate about, and then try new things. Because with new things, with new learning, you're creating some new neural connections within the brain. You're becoming from a place that is so much more heightened, and that you'll be engaging with people that align with your own sense of self and sense of purpose, and then see what starts to happen from that place. Miracles will start to happen, but it's not miracle. It's the laws of the universe. And once we can tap into that, everything starts flowing.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. And I just did an episode a few episodes back called The Fun Factor, how playing together helps you stay together because of what you're just
Yeah.
saying. And too many times we get so serious in our day to day and the responsibilities, and especially with kids and then relationship, if it's gone on for several years, there's the dip,
Mm,
and always finding that fun, bringing that inner child out and having
for
fun
sure.
is one
Absolutely.
of the ways to go. Well, Drive, I feel like we could talk for days, I think.
Absolutely.
And I just want to have you tell our listeners how they could get in touch with you if they're interested in working with you as a manifestation coach.
Absolutely. So my website is drivepatel.com, all one word. I put my personal number there as well, because I like the idea of connecting with people and not kind of simply hiding behind social media
Mm-hmm.
or any of those things. So drivepatel.com is one of my easiest ways for people to connect with me. I am relatively new. I know I'm going to sound like a bit of a dinosaur here. So I am relatively new to social media, and I've only just started my channels, which I am looking to grow. So I am drive.patel on Instagram as well. But sure, for the most amount of information and data and a booking service, it's drivepatel.com. And I absolutely love to connect with anyone and everyone. And I love the fact that we can connect with each other, because just like we are doing right now, Bill, when you are connecting with like-minded individuals that are constantly looking to learn and to grow, it shifts your own vibration and your own
Oh,
frequency just by conversing. So I'd like to
absolutely.
thank you for giving me this fantastic opportunity to give my message out to the world. And I really hope that this is something of importance to some people out there. And I hope it is a message which they can help in their own journeys moving on forward.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story and your journey. And I wish you continued success in all that you're doing, Drive. And hopefully we can chat again sometime.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for your time, Bill. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Bill.
And that's it for this bonus episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. Thank you for listening. And thanks to my guest, Drive Patel. As I mentioned, you can find Drive's contact information in the show notes if you want to know more or have any questions for him. And you can always contact me through the show notes or visit my website, menonthepathtolove.com. And thanks again for listening to this bonus episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast. And until next time, keep your heart open and stay on the path to love.